Welcome. This is the training module for those members of Rotary clubs who have the club lead in trying to select students and prepare them to go to Camp Royal, our district youth leadership training program. Your trainer today is past Governor Ken Corville of the Camp Royal Committee of the district. He'll answer some questions that hopefully will be useful to you. Ken, what's in it for a young person in high school to actually go to this Camp Royal? What do they gain?
I think what they gain is that they have an opportunity to go interact with 140 other campers at Camp Royal to start showing what their leadership qualities are, how to learn how to become team players, and build new relationships for a week that can continue for a lifetime.
Why should a club be interested in sponsoring students to go to Camp Royal?
I think it's, as a Rotary Club, I think it's what we do in the community. It's our opportunity to build better leaders at an earlier age so that they can maybe someday come back and be great Rotarian members.
So Ken, how should a club go about finding students who would be good for the Camp Royal experience? Where should they look?
When you're selecting your campers for Camp Royal, you might look at your Interact Club. You can look at local organizations like the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H, Grange, Boys and Girls Club, church groups, school counselors, or any other civic organizations that might be involved in the community. If you can't find them within your own club, those are some of the great places to look and look for leaders.
Great. So what are the qualifications the club should look for in selecting a student?
I think some of the qualifications you look for selecting a student are what are their leadership abilities, how do they do in school, what kind of organizations that they're tied into, do they do community service, are they part of what goes on in Rotary, do they help with some of the events that go on in their communities. It's really about leadership, and there's no specific list of things to look for. It's really entirely up to each club. But one thing to learn is that if you look at America or even the world itself, they're not always 4.0 students that are the true leaders in this world. If you look at some of the great leaders and look at some of their academic scores, they're probably much less than that.
When do the names actually have to get into Camp Royal or the district?
Well, the first step is by December 31st of each year, each club's given the opportunity to be able to send 2 campers to Camp Royal. After December 31st, it's open, first come, first served. So the first deadline is December 31st. And those clubs that do hit that deadline, it's expected that they'll send in their payments for the Camp Royal campers by December 31st. And as they add more going forward, they'll pay for them as they go.
What can we do after we select a student to help them prepare to go to the camp and find it successful?
Well, I think the first thing we should do is make sure that the coordinator for each club, and each club has a coordinator that should be assigned to dealing with the Camp Royal campers, is to contact those folks face to face, not through emails, not through tweets, not through any electronic messaging service, but call them and talk to them personally and ask them to come to one of your club meetings so they can meet you and be part of, so they can see what goes on in the club and how important it is that they've been selected.
What's the club responsibility in transporting the student to get to Camp Royal?
The club's responsibility to transport the students or get them to the bus. There's several locations where there'll be pickups done. Actually, they'll be assigned to certain locations to be picked up because we only have so much room on the bus. There's no need of anybody transporting the kids all the way up there and back. But we got to remember that our whole process here is their experience starts the minute they step on the bus. Then they're ours for a week. And then when they get back, you're going to find a whole new different camper.
Should club members try to attend any of the Camp Royal activities if they could?
We've talked about that several times, and the only folks that actually come to be part of what goes on at Camp Royal are our chaperones that are on the buses, and they only actually stay one night over, whether they're coming up with them, they stay for the opening, or if they're going back, they come up the night before the closing. The camp counselors and a few folks that are part of the committee, usually a district governor will show up for a day to talk to the kids. But it's a real distraction if we have too many people there because it takes away from what our program is and what we're trying to accomplish for the week.
So what should the club do once the student is back from the camp? Is our role over at that point?
When the student gets back from the camp, I think it's important that the student knows this going into the camp, that they are going to have to come back to the club that sponsored them so they can talk about how their week was and what they gained by going to Camp Royal.
Are there other things after that talk for the club is done the club might still want to be doing that year and in subsequent years with these students?
I think it would be good if the club would stay in communication with those students for a couple of reasons. Number one, possible new Rotarian down the road once they get their life going and become successful or get their career going. And hopefully, if they don't stay in the area, they join one of the clubs somewhere else in our country or world.
They could also put them on the newsletter list.
Get them on the newsletter list. Stay in contact with them as much as possible to make sure that they know that what Rotary does and that we're here.
And if they're not in Interact and have a few years to go in high school, they might consider joining our Creator Interact Club.
Yeah, they could do that too.
Any final closing comments you'd like to make for people who are coordinators within the clubs?
Well, a couple of things that maybe I didn't mention before, but I think it's important too, is that when the student is selected, I think it's important for the clubs to tell them that, the club is spending $895 for them to go to the camp. They can consider it a scholarship because it's really kind of an opportunity that everybody in the community doesn't get. They also, once they get back, or some of the things they can look for in the future is, again, to make sure they work on Rotary projects that are in their communities if possible, invite them to come and do that. But I think in closing, I would say that choose your campers wisely. This is an opportunity to get some good leaders for the future. And believe me, we see them. When they get there, a lot of them are really introverted. They kind of keep to themselves, or they keep to their own groups that came from the same clubs or the same schools. But by the end of the week, they've built relationships with 139 other people that are at that camp. And it's quite amazing to see the transformation in the kids by the end of the week. It's a great place to build leaders. And the biggest thing you can do is when they get back is to stay in contact with them so they can see what Rotary does in our communities and in the world. Because by sending these kids to the camp, you are changing your community and the world.
Thank you, Ken.